Spyro, the series of action platformers for the PS1 that defined a generation. And with the recent release of the Reignited trilogy, more and more people are going back and discovering the series or finally reliving some childhood memories. I love me some Spyro. The first three games are super fun to just sit back and vibe with, collecting gems, fighting baddies, and just exploring the world of dragons. But after the original trilogy, the series hit a bit of a blockade. After some not so stellar releases like Enter the Dragonfly and a couple spin-offs on Game Boy, the series needed something new, something fresh, something 2000s. I mean, yeah, the first three games are great, but let me ask you a question. How much Elijah Wood do those games have? That's right. None. So, Spyro the New Beginning is a reboot of the franchise that tries to make the series more story-focused. Now, the first few games had stories. You know, they were simple, but they got the job done. It let the worlds you explored and characters in them do the talking for it. But for New Beginning, let's just say they took a different form of approach on storytelling. The confusion begins almost immediately. Elijah Wood, David Spade, Gary Oldman. Am I playing Spyro or watching a shitty animated movie? Well, to be honest, kind of both. Although I guess now we know where the budget went. Okay, let's get this out of the way now. I guess to appeal to a more mature audience or to instill the idea that this was a more serious take on the Spyro lore, they decided to get some big name actors to play some of the characters. Now, maybe this would get some older people possibly interested in checking it out, but Spyro has always been kind of tailored for a younger audience. Like, when I was playing this game as a kid, did I realize that Spyro was being played by Elijah Wood? No, not at all. And it also doesn't help that most of the voice acting is not very good. I mean, I don't blame the actors really, because I feel like they probably just hired Gary Oldman and were like, he's a good actor, he'll figure it out, because most of his lines as Ignitus, he just kind of sounds bored. Elijah is okay as Spyro, but some of his line reads can be pretty awkward at points. I think David Spade actually does a pretty good job at Sparks, but unfortunately Sparks as a character I just kind of found annoying, so I ended up not liking him just based on that. I mean, they give him all these pop culture references, and he keeps calling Spyro fat. Like, what am I playing? Do you want me to take this seriously or not? And oh man, when characters start talking in this game, they just do not stop. They just go full exposition dump on your ass.
Us, guardians, that is, and we had one job. Ensure that all the eggs were hatched. It was the year of the dragon after all, and our very survival depended on those eggs. But the temple and grotto are now gone. Overrun by...
Temple? What temple? Can you take me? Can I see it? Where I came from, I mean?
No. Who knows what forces occupy the temple now? What state it's in? You don't understand. After they came for you...
They? Well, who is they? And why did they come for me?
Because the prophecies spoke of a purple dragon. A dragon born only once every 10 generations. You.
Does that mean him? Wait, this guy, Spyro, some special once-in-a-purple thing? I think you might mix that one up. Whoa, that's a little bit of a stretch. I've heard some doozies.
Do I ever get to play the game in this game?
Luckily for us, once the game does actually start, the cutscenes become more manageable. But seriously, the opening section of this game just keeps stopping you every 10 feet to give you kind of just a useless cutscene.
Hey, when in doubt, break it, right? Go nuts.
Like, why did you stop me? I obviously saw that I was gonna have to break that hole open. Did pausing the game for Sparks to deliver a one-liner really add that much value? Now you might say that in the first Spyro game, you got interrupted whenever you rescued a dragon, but there were only a set amount per stage. You yourself had to be the one to activate them, and the dragon cutscenes are at the longest like 30 seconds, and most of them actually give you hints that can help you out in a level. Plus, they really let you loose right away in the first game, and they let you learn a lot of the things on your own. I kind of thought they were going to do that in this game too, but then they ended up throwing in a mandatory tutorial section. Now, I get tutorials, right? Teaching players how to play, I understand that. I'm fine with that. But when a player has already been playing around with the combat system for like 30 minutes, chances are they're going to have a pretty good understanding of what they're doing. By the time the game was telling me how to play, I had already figured that all out, and it just left me with this tutorial that was not needed. And while we're here, let's talk about gameplay. The gameplay is a third-person action game, just like most of the other installments, but for this game, they really decided to double down on the combat. Ah yes, the best part of Spyro games. In the original trilogy, most enemies would die in one hit. Some might require you to charge them because they have armor, or some might be weak to fire. It's incredibly simple, but it worked well, because again, the first games were more about exploring. The enemies were more just an obstacle in your path, and they often reward you with gems. But since A New Beginning is a more linear experience, where you're just supposed to get from one end of the level to the next, combat is really all you have. So is it good? No. Alright, moving on. Okay. Spyro can attack with the circle button. He does this little combo, and one of the hits can actually send enemies in the air, and then you can do an air combo, which if you do an air combo, you get this epic slow motion effect. Pro tip, if you want to cut your playtime by like 20 years, just turn off the slow motion because you're going to be spamming air combos a lot. You can also use your breath. You unlock 4 over the game: fire, electricity, ice, and earth. The main breath usually just kind of does damage and might stun enemies, but you can also use triangle, which often shoots a more area of effect breath. And yeah, that's it. There's a couple other small things like ramming into enemies by charging, or also strafing, which to be honest I completely forgot was even in the game because why would I need to strafe in a melee focused game? But the main problem is a lack of variety. Each level boils down to walk into an arena, fight a bunch of the same enemy, grab gems, rinse and repeat for like 30 minutes, and then fight a boss. These monkey dudes are the main thing you're going to be fighting for pretty much the entire game. Each level has maybe 1 or 2 other types of enemies, but they mostly all behave the same exact way. My strategy every single fight was just do an air combo on one enemy until it died. If you get surrounded, just spam breath to stun everybody, and then just go back to mashing circle. Most enemies have pretty much no way of hitting you when you're in the air, so as long as you stay off the ground, you're practically invincible. There is like no hit stun though, so if you get cornered, enemies can sometimes stun lock you to death. But if it's a 1 versus 1, you get to do the stun locking. The only thing some enemies can do to stop you is block, which is honestly just annoying. It doesn't do any damage, it just pushes you back, and they'll oftentimes just immediately go back to blocking again, just knocking you away yet again. Baiting also doesn't really work. They will sit there and literally just hold the block for like forever, and then they'll stop and be vulnerable for like 2 frames and then just block again. But it's not hard. The only hard part is not to die from sensory deprivation. Some of these arenas drag out for just way too long. They just keep sending enemies at you, and you just mash circle until either they die or you die. But even if you do die, there's pretty much no consequence. Any enemies you killed will stay dead so long as you fully deplete their life. So as long as you kill 1 enemy every time you die, you're still making progress. And this isn't even really consistent, as some areas force you to refight everything. I honestly don't know. I don't know. There's also bosses which are a complete joke. I actually lost the footage for some of them, but they're not even worth mentioning, so it's not even that big a deal. Most of them you can literally just jump at and attack, since, as I said, most enemies don't really have aerial moves, so as long as you just jump at them and don't get hit by their main swings, you'll be fine. And as long as you deplete at least 1 of their health bars, if you die, they do not come back at full health. The final fight against Cinder, I literally just jumped up and slightly to the left and mashed circle until she died. It all just feels wholly unsatisfying, And that isn't helped by just how dog shit Spyro feels to play. The controls feel stiff, and Spyro just feels awkward to control sometimes. Compare this to the first game, where half the enjoyment comes from how smooth the gameplay is. I mean, in Spyro 1, charging is like your main movement option. You might not use it all the time, as, maybe there's some sharp corners that, it's nice to slow down, but for the most part, you can run like everywhere. It affects your turning a little bit, but you're still able to turn pretty well. But in A New Beginning, you turn so slow while charging, you literally just cannot do it in most places. And charging itself also does literally 0 damage to enemies, so I'd consider charging in combat basically useless. Gliding also kind of sucks now. You get 2 jumps, which is nice, but Spyro drops immediately like a bag of rocks holding glide. This isn't really that big a deal though, since there's almost no platforming anyway. So, damn. Do I have anything good to say about this game? No, not really. The story was cliche and uninspired, the gameplay was monotonous, and the game doesn't even run well. Doing a level 3 fireball anywhere will basically cause the game to just tank. So why did I play this game in the first place? Well, 'cause this one has a sequel, baby. The Legend of Spyro and the Eternal Night on the Nintendo Wii. I played it as a kid, and when I realized there was an original on PS2, I wanted to check it out. Well, maybe we'll talk about the Wii title some other time, but until then, I'll see you guys next time. And if you really want to play Spyro, just play the Reignited trilogy.